And so good leaders watch all of this happening. They're right in the mix with the team, but they watch who the true leaders in the group are, who's a little bit scared, and whose voice is so loud that if all they do is put one little check mark on the canvas, it's enough to make the team feel like we've accomplished something here. So it's a true leadership journey, because that's what we do as leaders. We begin, we become, and then we eventually believe in ourselves as leaders.
Welcome to the Women Choosing Growth podcast, where we bring you practical advice and guidance on how to grow your business and achieve success in your entrepreneurial journey. We feature inspiring stories of success, challenges of growth, and lessons learned from women entrepreneurs, industry experts, and thought leaders who have been through the growing pains inevitable as an entrepreneur. Whether you are just getting started or are looking to scale up your business, our show is designed to provide you with the tools, resources, and community you need to grow your business. Join your host, Tina, a lifelong entrepreneur and business growth advisor, as we explore topics such as marketing, sales, finance, leadership, and personal growth, all tailored specifically to the needs of women entrepreneurs. So if you're ready to grow your business faster and smarter, and learn from the experiences of those who have traveled the growth path before you, then this podcast is for you. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get started.
Welcome back to Women Choosing Growth. I am your host, Tina Sue. Today's guest is known as the Monday Video Lady for her energetic welcome to the week. Karen Grosz is a 5-time author, both award-winning and TEDx speaking, founder of Canvas Creek Team Building, and a recipient of the Montana Governor's Award for her volunteerism. Her mission is to inspire others to be their best, to try the next thing, and to know that you are worth every effort. In addition to making an impact through her books and speeches, Karen works as a team and leadership development coach for companies as large as Walmart and as small as your local beauty salon. She shares with us today what quiet leadership is in 3 easy to understand and implement guiding principles on how to be the best leader. Whether it's at your office, with your spouse, with your kids or your neighbors, leadership is in all aspects of our lives. And she shares inspirational stories that will help you apply this learning everywhere in your life too. Let's get on with the show. Welcome back. We are kicking off a fabulous episode with Karen Grosz, a leadership expert who is spot on when she says growing people is interesting. I think interesting is the perfect description of navigating the roller coaster of entrepreneurship, trying to grow businesses, which always involves people, which then involves leadership. Leadership in all aspects, including goal setting, to accountability, to getting along, to saying so long. Karen seems to have seen and done it all. We have a lot to learn from Karen around team building and leadership development. So let's get started. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you. Good morning.
Before we dive into leadership, because I know we have a lot to unpack, I want you to paint the picture of your expertise, as I know you have worked in so many different environments in your whole adulthood. Could you just give us a snapshot into what that looks like for you?
Yeah, I sure can, Tina. I don't know if you know this from my story, but the way it started is a teacher who told me I was too stupid to go to college. And yeah, and I believed her. And so I did all kinds of not stupid things, like ran away from home and got married really young and just, I'm not stupid. Fortunately, is still married to the man that I ran away with. So that worked out.
That's
okay.
A great story.
Yeah, right. That's where we started. And so nobody in my world was saying this person is going to be a leader. I had to figure it out on my own. So I started with sometimes the most menial jobs, started my own companies, worked for people sometimes for weeks and sometimes for a couple of years, and learned everything I could, from daycare to house cleaning to car sales, which is probably where I learned the very most, into the direct sales world, which was fascinating. And it's been an amazing ride. And each thing has taught me something really big. I call them my nexts.
Yes. It's when you're working with that many different industries, different types of people, from a leadership standpoint, you've probably worked for and with some interesting personalities, to say the least. There's that word interesting again.
Right?
Now, one thing I did see from information on you is that you used to be very shy and couldn't even talk in front of a few people, and now you're on stage. So, transformation?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. So it started by I went to my first PTA meeting and I got elected president of the PTA at that meeting. Because you
Nice.
know how it is. Somebody walks in the room like, "Oh, we're so happy you're here. You get to be president." And my
You're new.
father-in-law,
You're
right?
elected.
And I didn't even know what it meant, but I was like, "Oh, they like me." And
Exactly.
my father-in-law said, "This is going to be a disaster," but he said, "I know how to help you." And so he sent me to Toastmasters. And at the first meeting where I had to introduce myself, I was crying so hard at the podium, and I'll never forget it, Tina. There were two men in three-piece suits, and I was young, bad haircut, secondhand clothes. And these two men in three-piece suits, one on each side of the table, they both stood up, and they both at the same time walked behind me, and they each put a hand on my shoulder. And one whispered in my ear, "You can do this."
Aw.
And I still feel that warmth and I still
Mm.
hear those words every time I get on a stage. And now I've talked up to 10,000 people. And it's kind of how do we get the microphone out of Karen's hand instead of how do we get her to talk? But it was a very
Oh,
intentional growth, but it was started by accident.
that is so amazing. You just gave me goosebumps on that because those are the moments in life when, like, major change happens, right? Someone just
Mm.
something so simple as whispering in your ear, "You got this, girl."
Yeah. And I just think we have to remember that as moms and as community members, but especially as leaders, to just find that person who's struggling and lean in and say, "You can do this." Is when we believe in them, they'll believe in themselves.
Oh, that's so powerful. I love it. Let's talk about leadership. How do you define leadership?
That there are so many ways that I define it, but I really think that quiet leadership is the most important type of leadership. It used to be that it was a good old boy, John Maxwell, follow these 10 tenets and you'll be a fabulous leader. And it's not anymore. The leadership now has to be intuitive and it has to be a little bit more quiet, I think, in order for it to be effective. You can change the world with a whisper. You do not have to have a riot. You can just lean in and say, "You can do this. I don't like how this is going. What if we tried it this way?" That leadership by whispering is incredibly powerful.
Okay. And now we heard your whisper story. What does it, can you dive into that a little bit more about what quiet leadership really means? Something where people who haven't had that inspiration, a moment in their ear, what does that mean? Help us out.
So I wrote the book Quiet Leadership during the pandemic when we were yelling at each other. Remember Thanksgiving dinner where you're fighting over masks and politics, right?
Who's
And
not wearing the right mask?
right? And I leaned into my husband and said, "I think what we need right now is some quiet leadership." And it just was a light bulb moment for me. I realized that quiet leadership is all of those things that you know almost innately. You learned it from your dad, you learned it from a neighbor. It's the things that you're doing just on your own that you're like, oh, like my father said to me, people don't listen unless they ask to be told. Now, that's not really one of the tenets of leadership, but it's so powerful. If as a leader, you figure out how to have a conversation with somebody so they're asking for your expertise instead of you saying, "This is what you need to do."
Hmm.
So that's kind of where that came from, that idea that you already know these things, you just need to bring them to the front and start using them.
Can you give us an example of how that works for the listeners that we have that are building teams, right? Like how do you break that down? How do you get started?
Yeah, so there's three things that I really think are the most basic to quiet leadership. The first one is ask more than you tell. We often think that a leader has to be an extrovert and they have to know all the answers, they have to know all the ways to do things. And it's easy for us to jump up on our soapbox and say, "Do A, do B, do C," and nobody is listening. But if you ask a
Mm.
question first, what's your goal? What are you struggling with? How have you considered handling this? And here's the power question: what do you want to know from me? Or how can I help you? When we ask that, then we get to tell people what we want them to know. And it's probably A, B, and C, what we would have said originally, but they're not listening because we just told. The second
Mm.
one is to act more than you direct. Especially now, the young people coming up are looking for leaders who are in the trenches with them. If we're digging ditches, we're digging ditches together. So you have to be willing to be in the game, pick up the litter, and stand right beside your people. Then you don't have to direct them. They'll know what you expect of them as the leader.
Mm-hmm.
The third one that I think is really important is to celebrate more than you correct. I'm a huge believer that really good recognition will solve every problem in an organization. So if you're new as a leader, you have to think about being very intentional with what you want to celebrate. One of the things we often celebrate without thinking about it is people whining and not getting their work done. I have too much to do and I don't know how to do it. And we'll listen to that for hours instead of saying, wow, I'm really proud of you for getting this little bit done. I'm so happy with you for getting that done. And the more we celebrate the right thing, the more they're going to do the right thing. And so if you're giving people your time, it should not be for, I can't do it. It should be for, look what I've done. That just works so much better to celebrate more than you correct.
I can see where these three simple things are in all aspects of life, from the workplace to at home to, like you said, raising children, nieces, nephews, neighbors. Like, all that's pretty impactful.
That's really so. When my dad said to me, people don't listen unless they ask to be told, that was my watershed moment. And this is how I'm going to be as a leader. If you ask three questions, you get better results. But now I ask my family three questions before I launch. I ask the waitress three questions before I order. I ask three questions before I start in on whatever the diatribe is, so that I know that they're listening. And it works so well with spouses. But I always tell people that with your spouse, you don't want to say, what the hell were you thinking, as your first question. That's never a good one.
That's funny that you even say that, because as you were going through that first point of ask more questions, I that literally is something that I say in our personal relationship. Like, you didn't ask me enough questions. You made that assumption, and because we're both leaders, we're both entrepreneurs, like we're both very much into self-development. Like, we literally can call each other out. So immediately I was like, oh yeah, we're working on this asking more questions thing, even in our personal life.
And it makes such a difference, doesn't it? Have you seen it changing your relationship?
Yes, yes, because we are getting better on it. But he just there was a wreath that was like making a scratch on the door, because I just hung it up for fall, hung up a new wreath, and whatever. And so he's like, "Oh, hey, it's scratching the door." So I fixed it, put it back up the next day, and he still thought like, "We're scratching the door. Why are like, you didn't ask me?" And literally, I said, "You didn't ask me enough questions." I hung it back up, but you didn't ask me if I fixed it. I already fixed it, And then he laughs like, "Yeah, you're right. I should have asked." So, like, just even being open about asking more questions, and because I
Mhm.
feel honestly, a few years ago, I would have been mad
Yeah.
because he made the made an assumption.
Yes.
And this is just like one tiny story of our lives, but it's the same thing with employees, right? Like, if a leader is like assuming you didn't get the deadline or didn't do the project, like, ask more questions. Why didn't, is
Right.
that done?
Right.
Okay, it's not. What was some of the obstacles? So am I getting it right on the
Oh my
question
gosh, you're
asking?
so getting it right. Yeah. That's exactly what we
Okay.
need. How can I help you get this done? What do you need?
Yeah. What do you need
Yeah.
for the next project? Because we really need to be hitting our deadlines, right? So it's not accepting the fact that maybe something didn't get over the line, but then it's asking, like, how do we make sure that we don't miss next week's deadline?
Right? Yes. And it doesn't mean, it's the difference between sympathy and empathy. It's not, oh, I'm sorry that you had a hangnail and you couldn't type really fast. It's, okay, so what are you going to do for that hangnail so that next week you can get back on time, which is empathy. I hear that you have a problem, but how are we going to fix that?
Yes, I love it. I love it. And
Yeah.
then act more than you direct. I think that is so crucial in being an equal in, again, all the aspects.
Mhm.
I have said that in my own. I used to call myself president and PM. That was my title. Because I took out the trash, president and PM. My staff literally knew me as that. And they knew, like, don't make me put my boss hat on, because then I'm having to be a leader that I didn't want to be. I've done everything that you've done. I will do anything that you're doing. We have our own roles, but I will take out the trash if everyone else is busy on Tuesday night. Like, I'm not better than that. So that was my leadership style. as well, president and peon. But I've also told my kids the same thing. We're equals. I've seen parents do that where they're yelling at their kids, and when their kids yell at them, like, "Oh, you can't talk to me like that." Well, you're literally doing the same.
Right?
What's good for the
Right?
goose is good for the gander, right? So
Right?
I love that in leadership.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to once in a while step up and say, as the boss, as the leader, as the parent, this is what my decision is. But I think if you have stood shoulder to shoulder with people, that they listen to that with more grace and more, okay, she is in boss mode right now. She just put on her boss hat and she's
Mm-hmm.
made the decision. I'm going to listen because she stood right beside me and I, know what her sweat smells like when we're picking up litter.
Yeah, exactly. That was the reference you made. That's funny. And then the third one, celebrate more than you correct. I think that is something we all can work on. It's so easy to put the grease at the squeaky wheel, right?
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And we forget that that is celebration. That's what they wanted. I'm going to be the squeaky wheel and you're going to pay attention to me and I take all of your time. And so you just have to find a way to limit that amount of time and celebrate them for something else because that squeaky wheel wants attention. So I'm going to give attention to the not squeaky wheel for getting their work done and the squeaky wheel will say, "Oh, if I get my work done, I get attention." You do have to celebrate with intention.
Yeah, it's the bully on the playground
Yes, every time. Yeah.
every time. We can't give the bully any attention. I love that.
Yeah.
That's probably the hardest one. If I had to look at these three um, kind of components, how do you as a leader work on? Is there action? Is there things to work on in your head or actionable on that third one? Because the squeaky wheel is as a leader, you're like, okay, I might be able to do it 2 times where I'm ignoring it, but how do you not get sucked into that more? I mean, you probably still will as you're building this muscle, right? But I'm thinking, how do you keep yourself from getting stuck in the squeaky wheel?
Right. So one time when I was stuck in wine mode, I was out to lunch with a friend, and he said, "Karen, I've heard this story before," and I was like, "Well, you will hear it again until I'm done telling it." And,
You go, go.
right, and he said, "It's kind of become a dead cat," and I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "We all have dead cats. We have things in our life that are important to us, but nobody else wants to look at them." And so in What's Next, I talk about dead cats and how we carry those around. And you have to help people see that you've told me this problem 3 times. Okay, you have a hangnail problem. Let's get you a manicure so that you don't have that problem anymore. And even more, so you've got the dead cat, but then even more base to that is just remembering that you get what you expect. And so when I see you walk in the room, Tina, if I think, oh, I'm just going to pull out that dead cat and I'm going to have to listen to whatever that story was, that's exactly what you're going to do. And so I have to
Mm.
set different expectations in my head, tell myself a different story. One of my favorite books is Crucial Accountability, and they talk about what's the story you're telling yourself. So if you expect that leadership is going to be all nose wiping and hand slapping, that's what it's going to be. But if you expect, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, you're going to do your very best, I'm going to celebrate you for doing that very best, you get to change your expectations and then your results. But it's really, you get what you expect.
And it's working on yourself as a leader.
It is. So I often tell, I pick on my husband relentlessly. You'll find that as you follow me around on Facebook, but I pick on him because or on social media, he has never seen a good driver. We get in the car and he just knows he's going to have to yell at 72 people in between here in the grocery store. So they use their turn signal. They went too fast. They went too slow. Their car is brown, whatever it is.
Yeah. They
I, on
looked
the
at
other
me
hand,
wrong.
have never seen a bad driver. I expect that you're out there doing your very best. You didn't use your blinker because you knew where you were going. You were speeding because there's somebody in the hospital who needs your loving attention right now.
Yeah.
And so when we drive together, I'm like, it's all sunshine and rainbows. And he's like, oh, they're all in brown cars. So
That's
we
funny.
absolutely get what we expect when we're driving, when we're being with our family, and when we're a leader.
That's awesome. That totally reminds me. My husband says that I shit unicorns and rainbows. not everything is always happy. Like, well, it is if you make it.
Right? It doesn't mean that there's not a rain cloud that comes through, but even
Yeah.
we need the rain, right? You get to stop and look for the goodness. And when you do that as a leader, you're just going to go to bed happier at night, and then you sleep better.
Yes. I do
Yeah.
it for myself. The unicorn and rainbow icon on my phone are in the most used. Like being happy again, unicorns and rainbows. It'll be fine.
You'll be okay. Yeah.
uh,
One more rainbow.
Hey, incredible women entrepreneurs. It's Tina Sue here. I know you're juggling a lot, growing your business, managing family time, and trying to find balance. Deep down, you know you're capable of so much more. But maybe fear or uncertainty is holding you back from achieving that dream business, that dream life that you deserve. That's why I created the Dream Big, Plan Bigger guide, a game changer for your business growth. This isn't just another goal setting document, it's your personal roadmap to achieving the impossible. Imagine having a clear vision of your biggest dreams, breaking through the barriers that hold you back, and reigniting that passion that fuels your journey. This guide is your roadmap to doing just that without compromising your family time or your personal priorities. You deserve to see your business thrive and still have time for what you love. Let's take this journey together. Download your free Dream Big, Plan Bigger workbook now at tina-sue.com and start making those dreams a reality. Now, let's get back to the show. So these 3 points are probably like, they're so impactful. And I think we could walk away with just these 3, but you've written a book. What are people going to get if they get your book?
Well, yeah, so I'm going to tell them a lot of things. One of the things that has come to mind to me a couple of times today is the idea that you have to talk to your people as if their life depended on it. It's one of the stories I tell in the book. So these are simple chapters, all with a story and a lesson. And my whole family are scuba divers. I'm not interested in scuba diving. I don't want to swim where fish poop. It just doesn't interest me.
I love that
But I
analogy.
love to pay for right. I love to pay for my family to go on trips, and I pay for myself as if I'm a diver. And I go out on the boat with all of the divers. And after about the third time, I realized that the dive master was asking every single person as if their life depended on it, how are you today? He would look them in the eye and wait for their answer. And then he would look to the next person and say, how are you today? As if their life depended on it. Now, in that, what he discovered is that my husband is overconfident and will just float away if he doesn't put some parameters around where he can go and where he can't go. And my daughter probably didn't tell the truth about her weight. And so she's going to float to the top because she didn't have enough weight on her belt. Right. And
Yeah.
then he would see my grandson was a little bit scared. But as leaders, we often don't look at people like that. We walk in and we say, how are you today? And we just keep walking. And so the whole book talks about things like this, about looking at the world in different ways and saying, how are you today? As if their life depended on it, because their life may depend on it and your business definitely depends on it. So when you get my book, you're going to get lots of stories like that hopefully help you look at leadership in a very doable way. I can actually stop and say, how are you today, Tina? As if I meant it. And I did. Because I'm not going to ask you if I know you're in dead cat mode. I'm just going to walk by you and say, I've got a meeting.
Yeah. We're done.
Do your work.
Do your work. I love it. Okay. So we'll put the link for your book in there, but we're not done yet. I need to know about this art behind you because I know it also has to do with leadership. Tell
Oh
me
my
about
gosh.
this behind you. Yes.
Yeah, I have a kind of a crazy background. I got on the phone the other day with a couple of accountants who are hiring me to help with their team. And the one accountant said, I've never seen anything like that before. and uh, and when they hired me, I said, "And you're going to have this in your office pretty soon."
Mm-hmm.
So what I do with teams is really it's really unique. We do collaborative art. So this art was created by 4 people standing together, 4 people who were accountants or bankers or other people who are really not artists. and they create art together. And what happens in the process is that we have three stages: begin, become, and believe. In the beginning, nobody wants to do it. Everybody's scared. What if I put a smiley face on there and it looks more like a frown? What would happen? It'd be terrible. But then the leader of the group, the true leader, not necessarily the named leader, but the true leader of the group will start. They'll put a little color on the canvas and somebody else will follow and somebody else will come along. And pretty soon, all four people are creating art together. And that's what we call the become stage. That's when they become a team. And we challenge them during that stage for whatever they need to learn. So we go in knowing, does this team need to learn how to communicate? Do they need to figure out how to manage change? Are they trying to celebrate? So the become stage, we change up the process so the team gets a whole different experience. And then the final stage is believe, when the team stands back and they look at the art, whether it's ugly or not, and they're so proud of what they've created together. They tip their head to the left, they tip their head to the right, they poke one another with their elbows, and they realize what they can do when they really truly collaborate and work together. And so good leaders watch all of this happening. They're right in the mix with the team, but they watch who the true leaders in the group are, who's a little bit scared, and whose voice is so loud that if all they do is put one little check mark on the canvas, it's enough to make the team feel like we've accomplished something here. So it's a true leadership journey, because that's what we do as leaders. We begin, we become, and then we eventually believe in ourselves as leaders.
Yes. And I would encourage anyone listening to like check out your website, because, if they're just listening, they don't understand and might be thinking it's like the paint classes where you follow the teacher and everyone is doing the same thing. And it is not that at all. These are not like follow the leader painting, right? They're having to be creative.
Yeah, there is. So I do follow the leader for once in a while, but it's not that. You're right. We got to figure it out on our own. And I'm not sure if you know this, but teams do this in complete silence.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
they
I watched your
create.
videos.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah, we have some
Yes.
great videos out there. I have a great
Mm-hmm.
team that takes care of me. Um, Yeah, so you have to figure this out in silence. And then when you do get to communicate, most teams are like, it was so hard not to talk. But they talk about how we work in silos and we don't visit with one another about what we're trying to do. And how do you figure that out? So it gives us a great launch pad for communication.
Yes, I did. I honestly watched the videos, and because I am visual, right? It just was like, oh my God, this can be so powerful. And you work with sizes from all like a handful of people in a company to you've worked with Fortune 100s and
Yeah.
big brand names, working with different, where you pull in the guy from accounting who's never met the girl from, the sales department, and they're coming together as a team and just really, really, I think a pretty impactful leadership exercise, especially getting out of your comfort zone. I
Oh
would
my
be
gosh.
very uncomfortable painting.
Right, right. Yeah, people are scared, but we call it neo-tribalism, especially when we work in high schools. This time of year, we're in high schools a lot, and people paint on one another's faces. And as soon as they do that, they're a new tribe, and that tribe is going to build your school. It's going to build your company. It's going to do really cool things. So yeah, we travel all over. We work with teams of 4 to 1,400, and we just seen some amazing, incredible teams, and only one that ever quit in the process. One team quit right in the middle of the process, and I was like, now that's weird. And their company went bankrupt 6 months
I
later.
was just going to say, I'd imagine they don't exist anymore.
They do not. They do not. And so now I can predict. I'm like, oh, this company's on the rise.
Yes. And I loved it because, as same thing, I've had decades of experience of leadership in businesses and as an advisor working with all hundreds of other people's teams, right, as their advisor. And leader, what do you call it? Team building
Yeah,
is like some people are still doing the same team building type stuff that we did 30 years ago. And
yeah.
it just, most companies now are like, ugh, do we have to do team building? So I thought this was like such an impactful, but yet fun and different. And I feel like people who would use this for their own teams, for their next retreat or whatever, um, could elevate their leadership a lot more than traditional team building.
Yeah, this gives you a launch pad for conversation. And before I started this company's 13 years old now. But before I started this, I was the person who was sick on team building day. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have work to
Yeah.
do. What a waste of time. I'm not
Yeah.
going to do a trust fall or climb across ropes. Because most of those things aren't truly team building. They're about the individual figuring out how to fall or how to walk the ropes,
Hmm.
where when you choose something like this, you cannot complete it alone. And that's what true team building is.
Hmm. I agree. I remember one was we had to do one of those nearly impossible. What are we like little? What would you call them? Where like the balls don't quite. You can't get the ball to go on the thing, and the like. I was like, I'm
Oh,
done.
the Rube Goldberg machines. Is that what it was?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was something where it's like you had to do something, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just not participating. I'm embarrassed to say that out loud. I consider myself I pride myself on my leadership, but it was a decade ago. But I'm like, oh, this is dumb. I'm just gonna let the rest of the team do it. But it sounds like in your painting, I would not have been allowed to step back, probably.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. Yeah, I would say you didn't fail. The experience failed. And with this, there are people who they're like, I'm not going to participate, but they stand back and they stir paint for the whole time. And truly, you would have eventually been like, fine, I'm going to put this ugly gray on the canvas. And the whole team would have been like, oh my gosh, you put gray on the canvas. And then you
Hmm.
get that team feeling. It's truly a unique experience. And everybody participates, even
I
those who
love
are
it.
the most hesitant. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is one thing with leadership, right? When we've mentioned it a couple times here about being afraid to move forward, being afraid to make a decision.
Mm.
So when someone is scared to do that, maybe they are in the back and don't want to be like not confident enough to do the painting, or in leadership, they're not confident enough to have the right conversation. How do we get past being scared?
Mm. It's a great question. I've done it a time or two, got past that being scared. During the pandemic, we were privileged to spend most of our time at a camp in the mountains and sitting around fires, learning from some very small groups of people. But one of the people who joined us, and I'm in Montana near Yellowstone, and we're way up in the mountains. This young lady was part of a VISTA group, so Volunteers in Service to America. And she was from Massachusetts. She'd never been hiking. She was a city girl. And like me, she's built for comfort, not for speed. And her team had just come to Montana from Oakland, California, where they worked 16 hours a day in a COVID clinic as 18-year-old volunteer students. If you can imagine what was in her heart, it was so heavy. Well, one of her friends invited her to go hiking. And if you go hiking in the mountains, what are you scared of? You're scared of snakes and getting lost and, not enough food and getting overheated, and bears. People are always scared of bears and mountain lions. And so Emily went for this hike, Tina, and she was scared. And it was typical. When we're scared, it's usually because we don't have enough information, we didn't ask for help, or we just like to be scared. Those are really the three big things that keep us scared. And
Mhm.
she was scared. She didn't have enough information. She didn't ask for help. So she's hiking along, and her friend gets ahead of her. So now she's by herself and doesn't know how she'd get back to the car if she had to. And she looked to the right, and there were some bears in the field.
Mm.
It scared her to death. So my husband is an Alaska mountain man. More than once, he has hit a bear in the nose to protect himself. He's chased a bear away from his favorite fishing spot by holding a stick over his head, running, screaming. I've heard some bear stories. I don't always like
Those
them.
things work.
I
That's good
know,
to
but I
know.
do not prescribe them. We always laugh. I have a book called Season that tells the story that Paul had got chased by bears on a golf course in Alaska on Friday, and then on Sunday night he was hanging a crucifix, and it's the crucifix that put him in ICU. So Jesus took him out, the bear didn't. So I've heard
That's
some bear
awesome.
stories, right? And this young lady is the first person that I ever heard who just sat down on a stump and waited for the end.
Oh.
Yeah, she just sat there. And you can imagine that, right? It's quiet and you're alone and there are
Oh.
mosquitoes buzzing around and it's hot and you don't know where to go. And there's the end of your life just to the right.
Hmm.
And her friend came back And she looked at her and she said, Abby, what the hell? And Abby said, the bears, they'll kill us. And she said, Abby, those are just cows.
Oh,
She didn't have enough information.
apparently needed glasses too.
Right, right. And you guys, that's almost always what we're scared of. We're scared of a cow. We're so scared. We're scared to death. We can't move forward. And it's just a cow. And so if you take that next step, if you ask the next person for help, it's just going to moo. It's going to swish its little tail and you're going to be just fine. That's why I went from not being able to talk to three people to, grabbing the microphone. It's a cow.
Mm-hmm. It's just a cow. Even if
Yeah.
it's a bear, you can tell yourself it's just a cow and keep on.
Right.
Keep on.
Just go forward.
Just go forward. What an impactful story. It really dives into the mindset, right? Our mindset.
Doesn't
She
it?
probably was worried all day long that she's going to see bears. So when she saw cows, automatically assumed they were bears.
Right? You get what you expect. I expect to see bears, and I expect the bears to end my life. And so I'll never make it out of this hike alive. People hike every day, and we make it back every day.
Every day. Now you've got me intrigued on how many people die from bear attacks.
Right? Not as many as you would expect.
How many cow attacks are there really?
Yeah, right. Yeah, there are not that many.
Not that many.
Yeah.
That is an amazing kind of summary of mindset, and you get what your brain is telling you. So
Yeah.
I love it. So quiet leadership, we've got the 3 points there. We've got your book. We've got this team building leadership exercise. I think people just need to reach out to you, and I'm going to put all of your contact information. I know you're also willing to give a free copy of your book to anyone who reaches out to you, right?
Yeah, if they just send me an email and tell me that they heard you and I talking, I will happily send them a signed copy of the book.
Perfect. You will mail that to them. I have that list right here. Any final words for our women listening?
I think the big words would be, you can do this and you deserve to do this. Just go and live your absolute best life and trust yourself. You know what you need and you can do this. You can do it.
Love it. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. The Women Choosing Growth Show is not just another podcast. It's a tribe of women helping each other grow. So please share this podcast with all the women entrepreneurs that you would love to see succeed. If you'd like to know more about customized business advising through Cultivate Advisors, download business tools, or sign up for upcoming events, visit www.womenchoosinggrowth.com. Once again, that's www.womenchoosinggrowth.com. Remember, we are in this together. See you on the next one.